Welcome back to Prospect Analytics. Today we have a very special episode in store. As many of you know, MLB.com recently updated their top 30 prospect lists for each team, and we are lucky enough to be joined by MLB Pipeline's very own Jim Callis, who is going to break those down with us. We're going to go through some of the biggest movers on those lists and which of those players may see meaningful time in the MLB this year. He also gives us his favorite prospect who didn't make their top 100 that we are going to need to be on the lookout for when 2026 Bowman Chrome is released. And then I hit him with a little bit of a rapid fire and give him two prospects with similarly priced Bowman autographs and make him choose who he would buy. All right, we are joined today by senior writer from MLB Pipeline, Jim Callis. How's everything going today, Jim?
It's going good. It feels nice to have all the top 30s and the farm system rankings done. Now we can kind of shift our full attention to spring training.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wanted to talk about those top 30. So I kind of had them side by side. I was looking at 2025 and 2026, kind of who some of those guys were that moved up the most, from outside the top 10, maybe into the top 3 or 4 in an organization. And I took a couple of guys that I know are very popular names in Bowman that you moved up a lot. So I wanted to know if I could get a little piece of information on these moves. One of them, I was just going alphabetically. The first one that jumped out to me, going as their 6th overall prospect in 2025 to number 1, Ryan Waldschmidt of the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, and Sam Dykstra does our Diamondbacks list. I think that was a case where when these guys come out of the draft, he came out of the SEC, so you have more information, but you're not sure exactly where to put these guys sometimes. And the Diamondbacks had deeper system. I think it's a combination of things. I think 1, he lived up to the hype coming out of the draft. 2, they had some guys graduate. So I don't with him. I don't really think he's so much more of I don't think he's that much different of a prospect, if that makes sense. I think it's more he got the first year under his belt, showed what he could do, and they had some guys, graduate and that he passed. So I with him, I don't think it's that he's a markedly different player. I just think now we've seen him for a year in pro ball.
Is there someone that you would say, who would you say, whether it's put on muscle or good reports from the team or added velo, who's someone that in the offseason personally improved their stock for you the most?
I'm just trying to look at the teams.
What do you guys split the teams 10, 10, 10? Or how is it?
It's kind of 10, 10, and 10. We had Ben Weinrib, who works up with us, did 2. I oversaw him do 2 of the teams. And there are some beat writers who Sam and Jonathan oversee. I don't know if I don't always put a lot of stock in the, hey, he's
off season.
He's put on good weight or he's throwing 3 miles an hour harder. I always want to see that happen in games because it's from doing the draft for as long as I have. I was talking to somebody about this today. Every fall, you're talking to guys and there's oh, these JUCO guys are throwing 98 or doing this and that. And then you get to the spring and a lot of them get hurt or throwing 92 or, even non-JUCO guys, on scout day, this guy's doing this or that. Well, they all know it's scout day. So guys are ramping up and throwing as hard as they can. I want to see them do it. If it's a pitcher, let's do it every Friday night for 5 or 6 weeks in a row before I get overly excited. No, that said, you get your Garrett Crochets of the world or your Paul Skeens of the world where guys are going crazy about them. But those guys, had stuff. So anyway, I don't know if I have a guy off the top of my head who jumps to mind because everybody likes to think that their players are making positive strides in the offseason. I want to see results on the field.
Now, I'll switch then to a couple that I think moved up probably because their results were better than expected in 2025. And one of the ones who was a popular in the Bowman world, who was the 11th ranked prospect for his team in 2025 and is now number 3, and that's Caleb Bonham of the White Sox.
Okay, and that's me. I do the White Sox, so I can speak to that one very well. Yeah, Bonham is interesting. So Bonham came out of the draft, and he was a second-round pick. He was well over slot. And the tricky thing with him was he was kind of an eye of the beholder type player in that when he was on the high school showcase circuit, there were some events where he played really, really well. And there were some events where he really, really struggled. And depending on where you saw him, you'd think, man, this guy's really good. And other people might say, I don't know if he's really going to hit. And I think everybody thought he had power, but he came into pro ball. He was Carolina League MVP in his pro debut. But I think the 2 things that impressed everybody, it's always good when you're better than expected when you get into pro ball. That's no slight. Ryan Waldschmidt was as good as he was supposed to be. So that's good. He was a high pick. But Bonham was a better hitter, I think, that people realized. And then also, again, when I was talking about defense, the White Sox have so many shortstops. I don't think he's going to wind up being their shortstop. He was a lot better defensively. Most of the guys I talked to who saw him as an amateur is like, this guy's almost assuredly going to be a third baseman. And our guys are like, that guy's a pretty solid shortstop. So he looked better hitter, better defender, better athlete than people realized. So yeah, the arrow was up on him.
Yeah, I like him a lot. He's a player that, like you said, it seemed like all the reports were, the swing and miss concerns and the approach, and none of it, seemed to be a problem. So it was definitely a up arrow for him.
Yep,
one of the other ones that was a big riser, despite having his season cut short by injury, he made a huge move up from 21st on the team list of 2025 to number 4 overall, and that's Mike Sirota of the Dodgers.
Again, that's me, and Sirota's an interesting one. So another guy out of the draft. All three of these guys were out of the draft. So Sirota went into 2025 as a potential top 10 or 15 overall pick at Northeastern. And he got off to a bad start. He righted the ship a little bit toward the end, but he didn't have a good year. And he wound up going third round, I think, to the Reds. Mm-hmm. And the Reds wound up trading him to the Dodgers in the offseason in the Gavin Lux trade. And Sirota hadn't played pro ball to that point. He like a lot of guys, he signed late, he didn't make his debut. So the Dodgers also have one of the deeper systems. So I like Sirota, but he hadn't played. He hadn't had a great spring. And I put him behind other guys who've gone out and been more established. Now, I'm not trying to sound defensive. That's just what the thinking was. Like, they had a lot of like very deep list. So this year, even though he wound up injuring his knee and he only played 60 games, he didn't have surgery, but he wound up missing a season. His numbers were about as good as anybody's in the minors before he got hurt between Class A and High A. And he was in the Midwest League of High A, which is one of the hardest places to hit in the minors. And he hit 333, 452, 616 with 13 homers in 59 games. So, yeah, he looked like the Mike Sirota who was going to be a top 10 or 15 pick before he slumped. So, yeah, he looked spectacular. So he totally, kind of like Bonheimer, changed his narrative. They changed the way people think about him.
Yeah, absolutely. He's another one that I was a big fan of watching this year. Now, since I did a couple that were draft, I'm going to go one international. Obviously, we talked about how it's hard to, kind of rank DSL prospects. So maybe when they come here and they prove themselves in single A, it's easier to get a boost. But we talked about how good Jesus Made looked. What about who sometimes seems to be cast in his shadow? Luis Pena went from the number 10 Brewers prospect to number 2 overall.
Yeah, there's same international class. I think Luis Pena actually put up better numbers than Made until they got to High A when Made, which again Pena was 18. So like that's quite the challenge. But yeah, I mean Luis Pena, I think is definitely overshadowed by Made, who's number 3 prospect in baseball. But Pena is a guy who can hit for average, hit for power, has well above average speed. He might be more of a second or third baseman than a shortstop, but I mean, he's a potential. I mean, you could dream of him being a 30-30 guy, perhaps. Maybe 25-25 might be a little bit more realistic. But yeah, I don't think he's quite as advanced as Made. But we're talking about a guy who played in High A at age 19, so that's pretty advanced,
right? And what's crazy about him is I actually just did, because I do like in the offseason these like team buy sheets where I break down all the prospects, what their Bowman cards sell for, and like who I think has upside. And I always look for stats of, when I see these guys who have, higher ISOs than I expect or lower strikeout percentage, whatever it may be. I looked at Luis Pena. This was fascinating. And I found this while I was sorting the filters on Fangraphs. Luis Pena is the first 18-year-old prospect with more than 300 plate appearances in single A to have a strikeout percentage under 15% and an ISO over 160 since Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Yeah, I mean those are interesting. Yeah, and like I said, he's not a big. I mean, he's not small, but he's like what 5'11", 190. Like he's not this big strapping guy, but like he barrels a lot of balls. He's really good, and so I think in his case is exactly what you said, where he played in the DSL and he put up great numbers in the DSL, but you never know exactly what to make like, or at least I don't, of those guys. And he signed for $800,000, but he wasn't like one of these $4 million guys who was anointed as one of the top prospects in his class. So I think on those guys, sometimes, at least I know, I like to see how's that guy going to do in the U.S. And he not only came to the U.S., he skipped the complex league and tore up single A. So yeah, he's super intriguing.
Isn't it crazy? I feel like all these prospects, when I do like my sheets, it's always like this guy signed for 3 million, this guy signed for 4 million. The whole Brewer sheet, I don't know where they find these guys. I was like, Made was under $1 million, Pena was under $1 million. Like, I don't know that there's a team that finds better talent for cheap than the Brewers. They just seem like they've been crushing it lately.
Man, they do it. They do it after the 10th round too. They have this ability, like they kind of have the strategy where they save money, and rather than say target a specific player like in the 12th round and give them $1 million, they'll target like 5 or 6 high school guys and be like, okay, we're going to sign 3 of them for $400,000 or $500,000, and like they find really good international players who aren't $3-4 million players. They find good prospects after the 10th round. They've junior colleges, whether it's Ashby or Mizorowski or Logan Henderson. They scout junior colleges as well as anybody. I think they do. I think that actually is probably the most underrated organization in the game in terms of doing. I mean, I guess they have more resources than the Rays, but like for all the credit the Rays get for doing what they do without a lot of money to play with, I think the Brewers do just as good a job, and they've made the playoffs how many years in a row is it now, or 7 of the last 8 years? I think the reason the Brewers don't get as much love as they deserve for kind of excelling in all these various aspects of scouting and player development is because they haven't been to a World Series. They've been close, but I think I don't. And the Rays do a wonderful job too. I'm not taking away from the Rays, but I feel like the Rays have gotten a lot more publicity for doing this type of thing compared to the Brewers, and I think the Brewers have done just as good a job.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've done a great job as well. One of the ones that I saw, and you want to talk about being buried in a good system like Sirota was, this was actually, of the ones in the top 5 that I found, one of the biggest single season movements. And that was from the 28th prospect on the Mets last year to number 4. And that was AJ Ewing, who moved up 24 spots in the Mets rankings.
Yeah. And it made our top 100 prospects list. And Sam did that list. I think with Ewing, the question always was, I think there's still some question, of how much power he's going to have. And because he doesn't have a ton of power, he was going to have to hit a lot. And he was a guy there were mixed reviews on him. He was an overslot, supplemental 4th round pick out of high school. And frankly, in 2024, he hit 230 and he hit 10 homers. He actually hit 10 homers in 90 games. I didn't even realize he'd done that, but he hit 233, and I was like, okay, whatever, didn't really move the needle. There was some talent there. Sam threw him on the end of the list. And then last year, he shoots all the way from single A up to double A in his age 20 season. He hits 315. He steals 70 bases, and he only hit 3 homers, was 39 extra base hits. But I mean, he hit, 82 points higher while jumping to double A, and kind of showed the same relative power, just did it more with doubles and triples and home runs. But I just think he's one of the better combination, I guess, hit and speed guys in the minors. So yeah, I mean, that was one where, look, the Mets drafted him, so I'm sure the Mets would say, I don't know if they saw that year that quick. The Mets saw that he had that kind of upside in him, and it just kind of happened for him, really, really suddenly.
Yeah, he was one of like the biggest risers in Bowman as far as like a guy who no one wants his autographs to now, like, who is this guy? Like, his stuff just exploded last year. And another guy whose stuff exploded, this is the last one I'm going to give you because he's had a lot of talk this spring training and I know everyone's excited about him. And, for a while their pitchers weren't that collectible in the Bowman market. Skeens kind of changed that with the whole, Skeens mania. Now
well,
everyone wants to collect pitchers.
There's only one Paul Skeens. So like,
right. But now
yeah,
everyone wants to collect pitchers now. And one of the biggest names last year, who's obviously got a lot of buzz in spring training, is Carlos Legrande, who went from the Yankees' 19th prospect to now being their number 2 prospect.
Yeah. And that's, I do the Yankees, and, it's funny, in 2024, he had back issues and barely pitched. They went to the fall league and he had more walks and strikeouts. He could not throw a strike to save his life in the fall league. And then I happened to broadcast, Melanie Newman and I broadcast their spring breakout game last year. And he started the game. So it's like, okay, live arm. We'll see. I just recounted what I told you. Didn't have very good 24. And he just dealt for 4 innings. I was actually surprised they let him go 4. Like teams are very different with how, like, some teams will pitch 7 guys for an inning or whatever, 9 guys for an inning. And like he went 4 innings and he looked great. And I was like, wow, this is like really eye-opening. Like, we always knew he had good stuff. And he went on and had a tremendous year. I think he was third in the minors in strikeouts, third in strikeout rate. The one thing I wonder about a little bit with him, the stuff's really good. Like, all the pitches, he can miss bats with all the stuff. He can overpower you with all the stuff. He even flashes a changeup. The walk rate went back up in Double A. Like, he was throwing very good strikes in High A, and then when he got to Double A, it was more. Now again, it does get back to what I say. Like, his stuff's good enough. He doesn't have to have plus control or solid control. If he has fringy to average control, the stuff's probably good enough. I mean, obviously, if you have plus control, if you're Paul Skeens and you have the stuff and you have plus control, then you can just kill people. So anyway, I do wonder a little bit. His walk rate really backslid, not as bad as it was in 24, but it backslid when he got to Double A. So that's one thing I'm keeping an eye on a little bit.
Yeah, he's been, obviously everyone loves to buy into the hype, and his card prices when people saw him throw 103 and strike out Judge in spring training just, went through the roof. So he was one that I was definitely interested in asking you about because I knew that you covered them. But, we might see him debut this year as a reliever, which obviously, if that happens, that can kind of affect the Bowman market. So people are always looking for, is this guy going to make it as a starter or is he going to be a reliever? I know that his command improved, but then you said, like, when he went up to Double A, it backslid. If you had to guess, now there's nothing wrong with being a reliever because he would probably be an electric one. But do you think that he will will they let him make his debut as a starter before trying to move him to the bullpen? Or do you think we see him in the bullpen first?
I think they'll try to have him make it as a starter. But I was going to say, a lot of that is honestly is dictated by what the team need is. If their rotation gets ravaged by injuries, he might get called up earlier than we think, get the opportunity to pitch. Or if, their guys stay healthy and he's pitching really well in the minors, and they're going for the playoffs again, it may be like, okay, like, let's gear this guy up to pitch relief in the playoffs type of thing. So I think with pitchers, a lot of it, especially pitchers on contending teams, it comes down to actual need of the team, and then go from there. It's funny. Like, I look back at Mizorowski. I was at the point where it's like the Brewers should just try to make him a reliever. And they had more starters than they knew what to do with, and he still came up with an electric starter for him. And then in the playoffs, they used him as a reliever, and he was good in that role too.
Now, when we talk about them coming up and making their debut, obviously we all expect, Griffin, McGonigal, Weatherholt, Benj, Crawford. There's a list of names that are either going to be on the opening day roster or be up early. Is there someone more, I don't want to call it a sleeper, but someone that you think will make play enough major league games to be a contributor that people might be sleeping on, as far as not, those top 5-10 that we know are going to be up very early?
I'm trying to look at the bottom of our top 100 list and see who jumps out. You mentioned LaGrange. Elmer Rodriguez might, like, some guys think Elmer Rodriguez, the Yankees, might be a better pitching prospect than him. Like
I have him ranked higher.
Yeah, like they're neck and neck. That's a pretty interesting one. I'll take you. He's lost some luster because he had a hand injury when he came into pro ball and he didn't have a good debut. And he broke his wrist last spring and it took him a while to get going. And he didn't drive the ball well in the fall league, but he's really been driving the ball well in spring training. I'll be curious to see what happens with Charlie Condon this year. Like, he's hit some balls very hard and very far in spring training. The Rockies, their first base situation is wide open. Like, I don't know that he'll necessarily make the team. They've got Troy Johnston and TJ Rumfield, who are, like, both from organizations I used to do top 30s for, and they're both kind of 4A players. Like, it'd be cool to see them both get a shot in the big leagues because they've performed well, but they're both kind of hit over power first baseman. It's not a great profile. So that job is basically there for Charlie Condon when he's ready for it. And I do feel like people aren't talking about Charlie Condon like they were a year ago. So he might be one.
Yeah, that's a great one. I agree. I feel like he gets kind of slept on, for someone who was such a big name coming out of college. People seem to have kind of turned on him in rankings pretty quickly.
Yeah, so he's maybe the one. Like it's tough because most of the top 100 guys are pretty hyped, and I'm just trying to think of the teams I do like top 100s for. Like there's guys who could come up and make an impact this year. Like I don't know that he's like a top. Like I think Bryce Matthews. Like, could Bryce Matthews have a 2020 season for the Astros? Yeah, he could do that. Like I think like it's possible. Like he's got those kind of tools, and he's gonna have to hit. I'll tell you one who's kind of a sneaky, interesting one is River Ryan with the Dodgers, because that guy's stuff is really, really good. And it's kind of hard to put him on a top 100 now because he's coming off. He missed a full year with Tommy John. He's 27 years old, but I mean, you're talking about fastball, curveball, slider, cutter, changeup. Like he can miss bats with all those when he was on. Admittedly, small sample size, but before he blew out his elbow in 24, he had a 1.33 ERA in 4 starts. He was not phased by, pitching at the big league level for a team that is basically in World Series or bust mode. And the Dodgers have gone through so many pitchers. Again, I don't think they'll probably have a bunch of guys throw around 100, 120 innings and then sort them out for playoffs. But I do think, like, if you told me River Ryan was pitching some big innings in the postseason, I could see that. Like the stuff's that good, and he certainly looked big league ready when we last saw him. And from everything I've heard, the stuff's back, and they're pretty optimistic about it.
Yeah, he looked great when he came up. And, obviously you don't want to try to project injuries, but when you look at the Dodgers starting rotation, it's kind of just full of guys who never seem to make it to September. So I think that, the River Ryan down the stretch, that could be a nice little piece for them. Is there someone, you said that he's, you couldn't put him in your top 100 because of the injury and stuff like that. Do you have a favorite player that's not in the pipeline top 100? Someone that you like maybe fought hard for, but maybe when you did the consensus didn't quite make it?
I didn't fight hard for him. I regret. I actually didn't think about it, but the more I talk to people, and I do our Giants list, I feel like Luis Hernandez should be in our top 100 prospects list. Like he'd be an interesting. Like, is there a Bowman card to him yet, or not?
Because not yet. He'll be in the next signing class gets their card probably in September.
Okay, so he'll be an interesting one to watch because, so he and Jose Gonzalez were the best individual amateur players in the last 2 international. I'm not counting Sasaki, who was a Japanese big leaguer, and Hoswar probably has a little higher ceiling, but Hernandez probably has a little more polish and a pretty high ceiling of his own. I have no way of knowing this, but I do our Giants list. I'm not convinced that if the Giants were making some kind of blockbuster trade and they were told, okay, you have to give up 2 of the 3 of Bryce Eldridge, Jose Gonzalez, and Luis Hernandez, I think the Giants might keep Hernandez.
Wow.
I'm not
that's
saying
high praise.
Everybody in the organization, and it's more gut feel than actually having any actual game action to base it on. But he just sounds really, really good. And I was looking back at some of the better, like the guys who were kind of considered cut above their international class, and the track record on those guys is pretty strong. And like, again, I'm not basing this on stats, but on him, the ones that we do have a little bit of statistical information on him because there's this league called the Venezuelan Major League that former pros go play in, including guys who play in the big leagues or AAA. And again, I'm not claiming this is the equivalent of AA or anything, but when Luis Hernandez was 15 years old, he had 346 and 104 at-bats in this league, including going 16 for 49 against pitchers who had reached the majors or AAA. Now, this is his 15-year-old. And like, again, I'm not just going crazy on the stats, but it's like he recognizes pitches. He makes good swing decisions. He's got bat speed. He's got projectable strength. He can play a good shortstop. He's got high baseball IQ. I'm a sucker for the guys who have skills to go with the raw tools. So anyway, I just, and look, I know we all got excited about Kevin Maitan years ago, and some of these guys don't pan out, but I just have heard people rave about this guy. So that's the one. Looking back and then like comparing him, it just happened today for MLB Pipeline. We do this kind of Twitter mailbag column that Jonathan Mayo and I trade off. And one of the questions was, where would he get drafted in this year's draft. Granted, he'd be 17. He'd be essentially like reclassifying, I guess, as a high school junior, like Willits did. And I was like, well, I don't think he'd go ahead of Rock Chalowski. And I think Grady Emerson would probably get he's comparable to Grady Emerson, who's Texas high school shortstop, who's number 2 on our list. People probably have more comfort because they've seen him on the showcase circuit, although you do have the Venezuelan major league thing with Hernandez. But like, to me, I think Hernandez would be the number 3 prospect in this year's draft. And that would be kind of hedging because he's so young and we haven't seen him on the showcase circuit. Like, I think you could argue him versus Grady Emerson. I wouldn't argue him versus Rock, but if you went back in time and we know what he looked at what Rock Chalowski looked like when he was 17, Luis Hernandez might look better at 17 than Rock Chalowski did. So anyway, that's the one I kind of feel like, even though he hasn't played yet, we probably should have put on there. So I'm all in. I've heard nothing but people rave about Luis Hernandez. So that would be my advice to your followers, your listeners. I'm not allowed to give gambling advice. That's prohibited by MLB. But I think I can give investment advice. Like, there you go. Now I'm probably hyping his price is just now. I'm driving the market.
It's going to go crazy now. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, I think he's undervalued just because we don't know what to do with guys who haven't made their international guys who haven't made their pro debuts.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back and look at some of these guys, like, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was held in this kind of esteem. And I mean, his career did not pan out for outfield, but Wander Franco looked like he was going to be the guy. Like some of these guys who were ranked pretty high and were held in this kind of regard is like borderline top guys who are considered borderline top 100 guys come straight out of the international market. Yes, you do have your Kevin Maitons, but most of those guys wound up becoming very, very highly regarded prospects.
And luckily for us, I think that he will likely be in 2026 Bowman Chrome, which is in September. So we might get to see at least a month or two worth of at bats if he
I think he's coming straight to the U.S.
Or is he coming straight to the States?
I think you're going to get him in the complex league in May.
Wow, that'd be awesome.
And then you may get, now let's just keep going high. You may get him maybe we see him and Josue Gonzalez playing some single A at the end of the year. Because last year the Giants have a bunch of really interesting young pitchers, and a bunch of those guys like were dominant in the ACL. When the ACL season ended, they went up and helped San Jose win a California League championship. So I don't think the Giants are opposed to, if things go well, that we saw Johnny Level, who's another good international.
I was going to say Johnny Level came up, right?
Yeah. Johnny Level did that. So I think if Josue Gonzalez and Luis Hernandez perform well in the ACL, I bet the Giants would give them the opportunity to play in San Jose. Although Johnny Level may be in San Jose too, and they got to figure out how to shift everybody around. Yeah. So
we could see Hernandez in single A at 17 for sure.
Well, I would say for sure. Don't put for sure. but the possibility is very real. Yes.
And I was just looking at, you had your article came out about a month and a half ago of the top tools at each, your favorite, hit tool, your favorite, all that stuff. What would you say currently among minor league prospects is your favorite overall tool? I know that, McGonigal's hit is a strong contender. Savage's splitter is probably a strong contender. Is there one that in your mind you're like, if I was a player and I could have one thing, this is this player's tool that I would want?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say like Savage, like that almost feel like that, like he still qualifies as a rookie / prospect, but
it's kind of cheating.
It kind of feels like it's cheating because, like, I mean, look, we know that tool played in the World Series, so
right.
I don't feel like I can take that one. If I could just take one tool, if I could take one package of tools, I would take Connor Griffin's package of tools. It's funny because he didn't win any individual category. I don't know.
As I was reading that article, I remember looking at because you did do like honorable mentions, and I remember looking at it and thinking, I wonder how many people in the history of these have been a qualifier for best power and best speed at the same time.
The other thing is too, like I only listed the next 3 guys. It was based on our grades. Right. Like, he's got plus tools across the board. Like if I went 5 or 6 deep, he would have probably been mentioned for best hitter, best power, fastest runner, best arm, and best defense. It would have been like A-Rod back there. I guess I would take McGonigal's hit tool. If I can't have
Hard
Connor
not
Griffin's
to.
entire package of tools, I would take McGonigal's hit tool. I just think that guy. I think that guy's going to be really, really good. Love to watch him in the fall league, and I know it's a hitters league, and everybody hits there, but there's something different about that guy. He knows what he's doing at the plate. He just has a presence about him. And I've said this a million times, but I'll say it again. He grew up as a big Chase Utley fan, and I could see him being Chase Utley. Yeah, it's funny. I said that on MLB Network yesterday when we were doing the spring breakout preview show, and somebody on Twitter, people, this Twitter war ensued where somebody got upset. He's like, "Oh, I think he's much better than Chase Utley. Like he's hit 25 homers and do this and that." And then other people were like, "Chase Utley's like a borderline Hall of Famer. Like, what are you
Hall of
talking
Famer.
about?" So,
Right.
it was kind of interesting. I was like, "Wow, like that's not enough praise for Kevin McGonigal." Okay.
Yeah, right. Where do you land on with him? Obviously they're kind of guessing for the most part, but I saw someone post that as of, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, Fangraphs has officially changed their projected opening day roster to include Kevin McGonigal at shortstop. Well, would you say the odds are over 50% at this point that happens?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because like you could also be a third baseman. Like,
well, yeah, I'm sorry. Is it over 50% that he would be on the opening day?
Yeah, I feel like it feels like, I mean, that guy's just gone out and plays like he's capable of, like, and when he comes to defense, a long term, I think he's a second baseman more than a shortstop or a third baseman. But I do think he's capable enough to where he could get by and he could play short for a couple of years. You could probably want a better defender at short. Like, I mean, in the perfect world, he's more of an average defender at short. You'd rather have a plus defender. And his battle play other places, but I think he could get by. But yeah, I think it's good for baseball when guys like him and the Tigers trying to contend. So at least in the Tigers case, 100%, if they think he can help them win now, he will make the team. But like, it's good for baseball when guys like Connor Griffin make the Pirates. Like,
yeah,
and I mean, based on what we've seen so far, he should make the Pirates.
Yeah, all I could think when I was watching that game when McGonigal hit with that first pitch 460-foot homer off Severino, all that went through my head was, you hate to see the teams that, manipulate service time or whatever, but my first thought when I saw that home run was it would be very hard for the Tigers to sit there with a straight face and say that he is not, like their team's not better with him on their opening day roster.
Yeah, and they're trying to win too. So you could, I mean, look, we've seen it happen with teams before. You could sit there and play the game like, hey, he's young. He's only played X amount of games in AA. He has no AAA experience, and we need him to get better defensively at shortstop. I mean, if he goes down, it's going to be some combination of those factors that are cited. But again, I don't think they're going to play game. I think I 100% think if they think they are a better team with Kevin McGonigal, they are going to play Kevin McGonigal on opening day.
Well, I hope so. So I wanted to end it here with a little rapid fire here because I know that you're a fan of the rapid fire.
Yep.
These are going to be two players. I'm going to give you two players. I specifically chose two that you guys had ranked very similarly, who also have Bowman autographs that are priced very similarly.
Okay, so which guy?
So for my Bowman people, I'm going to give you give me your upside pick for that price. All right.
So upside or who I would pick? Am I going ceiling or who I think will be?
Well, the card people love a ceiling, but I guess you can kind of factor it in.
Who I think is the better in the long run, which is probably gonna be the guy with higher ceiling. Okay.
Yep. All right. So at $250, JJ Weatherholt or Jesus Madej?
Oh man. Well, and I have to pick one. I'm not gonna take the easy way out. The easy way out would be to tell you that Madej has the higher floor and Weatherholt. I'm sorry. The Madej has the higher ceiling and Weatherholt has the higher floor. I got to take my day. And Weatherholt's very good. I have no problem with either one of those, but I would take my day. That's a tough
$200. Colt Emerson or Max Clark?
I'm going to take Colt Emerson. I like Max Clark a lot. He's never really torn it up in the minors. And I think Colt Emerson's going to have maybe a full grade better power. So I would go Colt Emerson over Max Clark.
$175. Walker Jenkins or Carson Benj?
I'm going to say Walker Jenkins, but it's funny. I was as high on Carson Benj, I think, as anybody was coming out of the draft, maybe on the media side. Really do like Carson Benj. I think he's a good player. Love Walker Jenkins. I think Walker Jenkins has your Benj higher floor. Jenkins has to stay healthy. That's beginning to worry me a little bit.
And we'll go. This is the last one for position players. $85. Aiden Miller or Luis Pena?
I take Aiden Miller, but that might just be. I mean, I was just talking up Luis Pena, but I liked Aiden Miller a lot in high school. I thought he was the best high school hitter on the showcase circuit his summer, and he broke his hamate, so it kind of depressed his draft stock a little bit, which I thought was odd. I'll take Aiden Miller, but man, it feels hard to pass up Luis Pena. Those are all tough ones. Those are good.
And then the last one, it might be even tougher because you actually have them ranked side by side, one ranking spot apart, and they're priced very similarly in Bowman. $60, Ryan Sloan or Liam Doyle?
I take Ryan Sloan. And look, I like Liam Doyle, but I think there's some reliever risk with Liam Doyle, and I don't see that with Ryan Sloan.
Ryan Sloan's a friend of the program, though. He's gonna love that.
He?
I didn't warn you before he said that. Yeah, I interviewed him a couple weeks ago about his Bowman card collection.
I actually went because I'm in the Chicago suburbs too. So there was a couple. So he was 24 draft, obviously. He was in today's MLB pipeline inbox also. We had a Ryan Sloan, Kate Anderson question, but I was talking to a cross-checker friend of mine, and he's like, "Hey, I'm coming up to see Ryan Sloan on Wednesday. You should go see him pitch." And it was crazy because it was like that time of year. There's maybe, I don't know, 1 day or 2 days in May where I'm not like super swamped. I was like, oh, I actually don't have anything to do. So I went over and saw Ryan Sloan pitch. So big
he's
fan
awesome.
Of Ryan Sloan.
He is a subscriber on my Substack. He's a Bowman collector himself. He has his own one-of-one autographs. He's really big into it. So he came on and talked to us, but he was a super nice guy. So I had to throw him in one of those questions.
That's cool. No, it's just funny. It pained me. So my question today was similar. Who I take, Kate Anderson or Ryan Sloan? And it pained me to only pick one because, as I said, I think those are two of my favorite pitching aside from that we have them ranked high in the top 100. They're just two of my favorite pitching prospects. I wound up taking Kate Anderson because he's left-handed and he has two breaking balls, and Ryan only has one. But then the flip side is, I mean, Ryan's more physical and he's a year and a half younger than Kate Anderson. And like I had Garrett Cole comps on him in high school. So I'm glad now it makes me feel good. I flipped it around. Like I slated him in the pipeline inbox, but now I've given him the edge here.
You've redeemed yourself.
Yes.
I appreciate you taking time out of day. I know you're busy this time of year. We really appreciate the top 30 that came out. As I said, the Bowman people, love when you drop those lists, especially people who collect their individual teams. They love to see that, progression each year, who got higher. So I really appreciate you joining me today.
Oh no, it was fun. Like I love talking about this stuff. And like I said, it's cool. I think it's cool that it creates interest in the game. But even spending like $250 on autographed cards before these guys get to the big leagues, like at least
Connor's is $800.
Yeah. Oh well, that's right. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So
and the tough thing with Connor is that like I have people ask me all the time, like, when a guy's autograph is $200 and they'll be like, oh, well, is he going to go up? And usually when you get to a certain amount, it's kind of like, it would be hard to, but I would have said no on Connor Griffin like $400 ago. And he's defying the odds. He just keeps going up and up to where the point that I can't even tell people, no, I wouldn't buy his cards because it's like he's a nonstop hype machine. It seems
so. He's
like.
at 800. Is he 800 right now? You said?
He's about 800. Roman Anthony's also around 800. Bobby Witt Jr. is only like 850. He's almost Bobby Witt Jr. levels.
I was just going to ask you. So if Connor Griffin becomes more physical Bobby Witt Jr., like how much is his card going to be worth?
Acuna, he's already priced higher than Acuna, who went 40-70. So it's like, where's the, what does he have to do?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you're doing this as an investment, where's the profit in that?
And the hardest thing about it is that it's hard to keep that hype, after you debut, because, everyone's talking about him right now. Bobby Witt Jr., when he debuted, I mean, he was a 722 OPS. He went 20-30 his rookie year. His card prices went down during his rookie year when he went 20-30. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know what the expectation is for Connor, but apparently it's got to be better than that.
I mean, because if we're being realistic with Connor Griffin, because he's 19 years old, he could come up and hit, well, honestly, if he hit 250 with 15 homers and 20 steals, that would be a really good year for Connor Griffin as a big league rookie. That would be really good. And people would be like, oh, that guy's terrible.
And that's kind of my worry with, JJ Weatherholt's up in that 250 range. And I love JJ Weatherholt, but there seems to be some disagreement between if he's a 20 homer bat and a 30 homer bat. And honestly, if he comes up and bats 275 with 20 home runs, people might like that might not be exciting enough to him warrant him having. Isn't that crazy to think about?
Yeah, that is. I don't know what to, like I said, that when Jason Dominguez had like the $500,000 card, I was like, who would pay $500,000 for that car? Like, obviously somebody did, right?
And you mentioned him earlier with his strikeout concerns. Outside of, do you know who's already priced higher a lot of places than Madej and Weatherholt and all those guys? Is Spencer Jones. He's also one of the most expensive.
That's Yankee hype. And like nothing against Spencer Jones. I'm taking Madej over Spencer Jones. Like,
is it because you can see in zone contact rates? Is that why?
Well, that would have been even if you just looked at the strikeout rate. Like, he struck out 35% of the time last year. How many guys do that and are huge impact players at the big league level?
And that's why I struggled with the post the other day that was comparing his swing to Ohtani's. And I was like, well, at age 24, one of them had won Rookie of the Year and one of them had a 35% K rate in AAA. That's a tough comparison.
The other thing was, I saw that too, and I shook my head because also, I think the story, if I remember correctly, was he was emulating Judge's swing and now was emulating Ohtani's swing. It's like, okay, well, you've now shown us that just because you emulate a guy's swing doesn't mean you become that guy. Like,
right.
Yeah, I can emulate Ohtani's swing. I'm not comparing myself to Spencer Jones, but I can emulate Ohtani's swing. I'm not going to go be Ohtani. Like,
right. I know. I just thought that was so funny.
I saw that too, and it was like, come on, like, what? Is he going to emulate Luis Ariza's swing so he makes better contact? Right. Like, what?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, those stories are fun, but I did a mental eye roll when I saw that story because I was like, classic spring training story. Like, oh, Spencer Jones, he's making adjustments. He's not Judge now. He's Ohtani. Like, okay.
And the funny thing about that is that I think I saw in his first, first 10 plate appearances maybe in spring training, it was like 3 home runs and 7 strikeouts. And I was like, that's just, that's just
here, I got one for you. And I got to run because I got to do a radio show second.
Yeah.
What's going on with Vance Honeycutt's Bowman values right now?
He doesn't have a card.
Wow.
It's very
sadly.
After
being a first round pick?
Yeah, every year they will take a handful of people from the first round and hold them for the next year's product to try to like generate hype around that product. He still doesn't have a Bowman card. Yeah,
because I don't know if they held him out in 24 and then he had such a rough 25 that they didn't do a card of him.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
I was just curious if people were going nuts over the 4 home runs and 4 at bats.
Oh yeah, that if he had a card, that's the kind of stuff that you would see people's card prices just go.
And the guy hit
170
last year. That'd be crazy to be going nuts over that.
They do it though.
Yeah.
They do it. The hype is crazy.
Like I said, I don't follow the stuff closely, but when I see the stuff, like when you see stuff make headline, like the Dominguez card, I'm just like, what is going on? Like, how can anybody do this? But again, I think it's great because it creates a lot of interest in the game, which is
and that's kind of like what I've been doing with the Bowman thing is that I've been able to convert a lot of people who are baseball card collectors that don't prospect. I've kind of brought them in and kind of, I started as like a prospecting for dummies. Like, hey, I know you don't know anything about Bowman cards. This is kind of how prospecting works. And now I don't think it's just because of me, because there's other people doing it, but we're now seeing the price on these guys is actually like, you used to be able to find, sleepers for $5-10. Everyone is now more expensive. And I think it's because there's more people involved. And like you said, it's just bringing more attention to it. It can only be good.
No, I agree. Well, thanks for having me. This has been fun to talk about. I always enjoy talking about this aspect of things. Like I would have been taking the under if you're like, hey, guess what this card goes for?
Yeah, literally, it's getting crazy.
Poor Connor Griffin. Like how is he going to live up to $800 a card?
I know. I'm worried about the pressure they've put on him already. But thank you for joining me. Again, I know that you're busy this time of year. Appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk about prospects with me.
Yeah, no, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Jim for joining us. We really appreciate his time. There will be a part 2 to that episode where we go a little bit more in depth into the actual process behind how he ranks his prospects. But for next week's episode, we are going to do a deep dive into the checklist for the brand new 2025 Bowman's Best with no other than Grand Salami from Grand Salami Breaks. He's going to tell us who we should be looking for, what cards in the product we are looking to hit, and hey, who knows? Maybe I'll even open up a box myself so that you all can see the product for yourselves.